Now we'll deal with threat identification and analysis. First thing we're going to look at is awareness. Now, what is awareness? Again, we go back to our principles. Principle to awareness is your 5 senses. It's what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, and what you feel or touch. This is your awareness. This is who and what you are. So, if we talk about awareness, we like to develop these 5 senses. And generally, seeing is not always believing. A lot of the time, we stop at a traffic light, we get a funny feeling, we look around, and because everything looks normal, we suppress these feelings. And we believe that's a grave mistake. But because we're not used to our other senses, and because the visual aspect says to us, no, everything looks normal, but the feeling is going, there's a problem here, we rather rely on the visual because it looks right as opposed to feeling right. Now, each of these senses have their own way of telling us about our environment and what situation we're in. And I'm pretty sure every single one of us have been in a situation where we felt something wasn't right, and afterwards it was confirmed. But at the time when it happened, because it looked all right, we suppressed those feelings. So awareness is your 5 senses, and we need to learn to develop these 5 senses. Because what you don't see, hear, taste, smell, or touch could kill you. If you look at nature, for instance, you look at how a buck, for instance, their awareness is very acute. They can see, they can hear, they can smell. And any predator, their senses need to be just as sharp as the hunted. So it becomes a game of whose awareness is more switched on. And we truly believe that your awareness is like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. There are no varying degrees of awareness. So in terms of self-defense, or if you're in the bush, for instance, hunting, your awareness must be switched on, and you need to develop your 5 senses. The next thing we look at is alertness. Now, the principle to alertness is a state of mind. And as human beings, we have 3 states of mind. We are either in the past, the present, or the future. And in order to be 100% alert, we truly believe you must be in the present. Because should you be in the past or the future, you're not aware of what's actually going on here and now. As an example, how often do we drive down the road and for the last 5 kilometers we cannot recall a thing? Because for the last 5 kilometers we were listening to the radio, or your mind was sidetracked, but you were somewhere else. You were not in the present. Now, as a predator, that's the first thing they'll look for. They want to firstly establish whether you are in the past, the present, or the future. And I'll tell you now that if you're in the past or the future, you're a prime candidate. So being in the present, you'll be able to pick on things a lot quicker. Your reaction time being in the present is about 2.25 of a second. In the past or the future, your reaction time is 0.75 of a second, if at all, if you even see it. Now, being involved in firearm training and the martial arts, we often hear stories of where people say, you know, I stopped at the traffic light and next thing there were 6 people standing with guns trying to hijack my car. Where did these people come from? Mr. Spock didn't just beam these people down. They must have come from somewhere. But because the person was in the past or the future and not in the present, they didn't see these people arrive. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to look out for. Number 1, utilize your 5 senses. Number 2, be in the present frame of mind. Once we've gone through the awareness process and the alertness process, the next step that we work on is our 5-step threat analysis system. Our 5-step system works as such. Number 1 is to observe. Number 2 is to assess. Number 3 is to plan. Number 4 is to act. And number 5 is to observe again. So if I can just run you through that quickly. Observe firstly means observing who and what is around you at any given time. And we like to observe in a 360 kind of way, in the sense that we need to know who and what is around us in our immediate perimeter, in the middle perimeter, and the outer perimeter. So when you come to your vehicle, how often do we look inside before we actually get in? When you come home, for instance, before you open your front door, do we ever think of who and what could be inside? Or do we just assume because the door's locked and the windows are closed and the alarm hasn't gone off that there's no one in the home? So it's very important to observe inner, middle, and outer. And if you can't observe visually, then try observe through your other senses. Is there a feeling? Can you hear something? Can you smell something? If no one in your home smokes, and you get home and open the front door and you smell tobacco smoke, the alarm bell should start ringing. There is a problem. So here again, we need to observe. And that observation must be inner, middle, and outer perimeter, 360. The next is to assess. Assessment is based on strengths and weaknesses. Once you've observed something, you very quickly need to assess what are your strengths and weaknesses and what are their strengths and weaknesses. This could be a way of assessing your home as well. When you come home at night, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? Do you have big bushes next to your front door? Could someone hide behind there? As a criminal, if you were going to attack yourself, you need to observe your home, your environment, and see if you were a criminal, what would your strengths be, what would your weaknesses be? But at the same time, as the homeowner coming home, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? And we then need to turn your strengths into, your weaknesses into strengths, and your attacker's strengths into weaknesses. The way we do that is the next stage, which is the planning phase. When we plan, we now need to decide how do we turn their strengths into weaknesses, my weakness into strength. As an example, my gun is concealed. Is that a strength or a weakness? I believe it's both. It's a weakness in the sense that you can't get to it because it's concealed, but it's a strength in the sense that no one will know you have a firearm. So how do you turn your weakness into a strength, and how do you turn their strengths into weaknesses? So that's your assessment phase. Your planning phase. The next step is to act. Now, in the action phase, one word of advice that I can give you: whatever your plan is, enact it with enthusiasm. In fact, you can have the worst plan in the world, but enacted with enthusiasm, I truly believe it'll work. But you can have the best laid plan in the world, enacted half-heartedly, I don't think it's going to work. So whatever plan you've come up with, if your plan is to run, you put the Nike Airs on and you run as fast as you can. If your plan is to fight, you stand up and you fight 110%. But realize that once you've acted, we then need to observe again. What are the repercussions of this action? If your plan was to fight, and let's say you went in 110%, you stopped the attack, immediately you need to observe again, because what are the repercussions of this action? Is this man still, or is this person still posing a threat to you? Where are his mates? Are there others standing around? Are you still in a potential dangerous situation? So you need to observe again, we assess again, we plan again, we act again. And once we've acted, we observe again, we assess again. It should be a never-ending process.